So I know we've got a lot of people still coming in. We're going to get registered and get some. So glad everybody can be here today. We're going to jump right into things. And so we're going to have a time of announcements. Now it's real easy to just think, oh, it's just announcements. There's nothing big about that. But the time of announcements is really a big thing for us, because this is an opportunity for agencies who have a need to be able to express that need, and for the volunteers in the room to be able to meet that need. And it could be anything. Maybe it's not directly trafficking related. Like maybe you're trying to get a grant and you don't know how to write a grant. But I bet there's somebody in the room who has grant writing experience. So as an agency, think about any upcoming events you have, any need for volunteers, any need for interns if you're hiring. This is your opportunity to share those things with the audience. And then those that are here who want to give back and you want to volunteer, that's your opportunity to jump in. So I'm going to ask anybody who has an agency announcement to come to the front so that our online audience can see as well. But first, I'm going to give a couple of announcements myself. Right now, we have Catering to Love, who is providing the food today. And if you guys have noticed, there is a fancy dessert in light of Valentine's Day. And that was made by Yareli, who is a baker for the restaurant Napoli's. All right. We also have a spotlight agency this time, and it is Cheryl's Voice. And if you guys didn't have a chance to stop at the table on your way in, the table will also be there after the meeting for a few minutes. Please feel free to stop by, get information, learn about what they're doing, and what they're doing in regards to trafficking and domestic violence. They're a great organization, so I highly encourage you guys to talk with them for a bit. Do we have any agency announcements? Yes. And please introduce yourself so those online will know. You don't know.
My name is Tirza. I'm with Unbound Now, and we have a gala coming up on March 30th. So just wanted to invite all of you, anyone that's interested, to check out our website, unboundnowntx.org. And it has all ticket information, location, all of that, but it's always a fun event. So you're all invited.
All right. Do we have any other agency announcements?
Yes. My name is Tina James. I'm the founder of Safe in the Six. It's an organization that I put together for our youth and community over in the South Texas area. I've been working with Mrs. Karen Wiseman, learning so much about sexual trafficking, human sexual trafficking, because we've had a lot of it over in our community. Some that most of you might know about in 2018, 2016. I was actually a part of those house busts that happened over there and kind of helped out on it. And as a matter of fact, on March the 18th, I have put together a march from Dunbar High School to Eastover Park, which is 5700 Ramey Avenue down to 4300 Ramey Avenue, where we're actually having a walk. It's called Break Every Chain Against Human Sex Trafficking in every community in our city. So hope to see y'all there. Look forward to it. Thank you.
Yes.
We're just visiting from Wichita Falls, Texas. We are trying to form an anti-trafficking coalition. So please just graciously let's come visit, and then we'll be zooming in with you for a little while. So we're from Wichita Falls, Texas, and I'm with Southern Grit Advocacy, a nonprofit that is, our mission is to prevent, disrupt, and end human trafficking through education and advocacy. We have several job openings, so if anybody's interested, I can give you a card at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, then we will go ahead and get started with our law enforcement updates. Unfortunately, Tarrant County Sheriff's Office was not able to make it today as something came up last minute, but we will hear from Fort Worth PD and Detective Matthews.
Hello, how's everyone? So updates for Fort Worth PD over the last month. Not all the cases are new, but we're still working about 27 cases and 3 tips. Some of them are still, the old cases are from December, January, but that's still our caseload. That's a lot of cases we've got. But I did want to highlight one. So while it doesn't happen very often up in this region, it does happen on occasion. Have a young lady, she's in her 30s. She made a report to officers that during her endeavors of coming from South America into this country, she used what we call coyotes, help her get across the border, put her up in a house here. After she was in the house here, started trying to extort more money from her. And during that time, had allegedly sexually assaulted her. So through that smuggling process, she's up here in North Fort Worth. She became a victim of other crimes, which could include human trafficking, which is what we work and what we're going to be looking into for charging these perpetrators as. But I just wanted to highlight that one since it doesn't happen very often. Been with the unit for over 5 years, and this is our first case that stemmed from smuggling. So hope you enjoyed that. Enjoy the day. Thank you. Yeah. I'm sorry.
The name of your unit?
Our unit, we are the human trafficking unit. And human trafficking, just specifically for our unit, most of our cases are just, you have a suspect known as usually a pimp and a victim who is usually local and domestic type relationships where the victim is forced to engage in commercial sex acts. And that's the primary gist of our cases. A lot of people get it confused. That's why I want to highlight this case. You'll hear stuff on TV about people talk about, oh, they're human trafficking across the border. No, that's a federal law against our borders, and that's smuggling. Now, when they do get in the country, if other crimes are committed against them or they're forced to engage in commercial sex, then it becomes human trafficking. So that's a big differences. Thank you all.
All right. We have got a great presentation today. Our speakers are very passionate about this, and I can guarantee they're going to get you excited about it as well. But let me introduce our speakers. A Fort Worth native and TCU political science grad, Ty Bowden, hasn't had to go very far to pursue his passions. After starting volunteer work with the net in 2013 while at TCU, Ty is now the associate director, where he oversees the MASE and internship programs and keeps things running smoothly behind the scenes. Ty is passionate about bringing men to the fight for justice in Fort Worth and across the country. A leader in the demand disruption movement in Texas, Ty has trained hundreds of men to engage and disrupt potential sex buyers over the last several years, as well as personally interacted with hundreds of buyers. We also have Glenna Pendleton. She has a history of marketing and business development. She has spent the last 20 years in a variety of roles ranging from healthcare strategy and development to now a real estate agent serving both residential and commercial clients. Her passion to fight trafficking began after her own daughter was trafficked. Luckily, with the help of law enforcement, her daughter was able to escape the situation and the trafficker was prosecuted federally. Glenna has since given her heart to fighting this crime and protecting other young people from becoming victims. She has created STEAM, an effort to educate the community on trafficking and how to respond, has been a long-serving member of the Five Stone Steering Committee, and has passionately researched legislation and advocated for laws that are tough on traffickers and beneficial for survivors. Please welcome Ty and Glenna.
Okay, so it'll take me a sec to get organized. Give me one sec. It's a pleasure, absolutely a pleasure to be here today. I have not stood at this podium since I think 2019 when we did this before. Today is a Learn to fish presentation designed to pique your interest in Texas legislature related to trafficking issues and inform you on how to get involved. Whether you simply want to know more about a particular bill or what our leaders are doing, or whether you want to actually go down in person and testify. So our goal is to educate you on all of that today. I hope many of you took the time before the meeting to find out who your representatives are before, we sent you a link. But if you didn't have time, it's okay. We can do that in just a moment. You have a handout in front of you that has a list of all the bills that we found related to trafficking that we want to share. And you can use that as reference as we walk through what's happening in Texas. So why, I have to figure out this thing. Why is this important? Okay, yeah, seriously, that's a question. Anybody want to throw something out? Anybody? Oh, come on, we have our legislative person. Tell us why this is important to know. Go ahead, sorry. Exactly. It affects your organization's ability to be able to fight this issue. If there's not laws in place to help support what they're doing, to provide regulations and training guidelines, our fight would be much more difficult. I want to take a step back for just a moment and give you just a little history lesson. Oh, wrong remote, sorry. Modern prohibitions of human trafficking in the United States actually have their roots in the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution. That amendment barred slavery and involuntary servitude in 1865. The anti-human trafficking movement really began in the United States after there were countless stories, would you believe it, of mail order brides in the 90s. There was several that were horribly beaten and murdered, and it became prominent news. Prior to 2000, the Department of Justice filed human trafficking cases under several federal statutes related to involuntary servitude and slavery. But the criminal laws were narrow and they were patchworking. Prior to the passage of the first federal act that you see here in 2000, trafficking of persons was not treated as a distinct form of crime. The first act focused on the 3 Ps: protection, prevention, and prosecution. It was focused primarily on foreign victims and immigrants. Later acts continued to expand the definition of trafficking, increasing programs, funding, etc. Some key milestones were 2003, the mandated annual report from the Attorney General, 2005, where they started to grant programs for states to assist victims and for law enforcement agencies to combat trafficking. 2010, when the Department of Homeland Security established the Blue Campaign, training law enforcement, training and support for law enforcement and materials for trafficking agencies and organizations. And in 2015, the Attorney General was directed to create and maintain a national strategy to combat human trafficking. In Tarrant County, we have our senators, as you see at the top, John Cornyn and Ted Cruz. And depending on where you live, a representative. Obviously, I can't bring a map to show you the entire DFW Metroplex. So I would invite you at this moment, if you didn't have a chance to look up your legislative representative, you can do it on your phone. You just put in your address and it will pop the information right back to you. openstates.org/find_your_legislator / and then just put in your address. Tools have been developed to help states in enacting human trafficking laws. Polaris has been a real leader in this. They released a comprehensive model state law in 2004 with subsequent additions in later years. The Department of Justice released some model law for states. Other groups included Freedom Network, Center for Women's Policy Studies, and even the Uniform Law Commission adopted a Uniform Act on the prevention of and remedies for human trafficking, which was officially endorsed by the American Bar Association soon after adoption. In Texas, our first efforts at the legislative level began in 2003. The OAG report in 2007 In 2009, a major year and milestone where they established the Texas Human Trafficking Prevention Task Force. There is a report from they do annual reports. The latest, I believe, is the 2020. And if you go to the Attorney General's website and kind of search for the Human Trafficking Prevention Task Force, you can actually download that report. It's very interesting. Okay, so as we go through these issues, we're going to talk about it along 5 broad categories. Criminal penalties. This is laws in all states that establish criminal penalties. They vary most significantly on how they define trafficking or a trafficker, the elements that they require to prove guilt in that case, and the criminal penalties enforced. Judicial protections are around immunity, diversion programs, or affirmative defenses for victims in cases against them. Funds and services, this ranges from legal services to housing, and it differs very significantly from state to state. Administration and cooperation obviously is important. This is where we set up coordination of anti-trafficking efforts. And awareness and regulation, which includes actions to raise public awareness on trafficking, training, setting standards for licensing, advertising, and disclosure. Now, your data on your handout is sorted in this same order. So we'll go through each of these topics and highlight some of the most salient bills that have come forward in this legislature. And by the way, we are early in the legislature. We're in the 88th legislature. As recently as last week, when I looked at the status of all these bills, they were simply filed or received by the Secretary of State. You can see as you look through your handout that they are starting to move through the process. Not just being filed, but referred to committees where they will discuss, suggest changes. Then they're brought to the Congress and they're discussed again. There's a lot of steps before they actually become law in the state of Texas. So we'll start with criminal penalties. And if you want to follow along, you can. One of the biggest topics in this legislative session is around disabled adults and the ability to allow prosecutors to prosecute traffickers who have victimized these people. We have a lot of laws around trafficking for minors. For adults, there's much more requirements in terms of proving the victimization, and with disabled adults, sometimes that's difficult. Statute of limitations, there are several bills around extending the statute of limitations. One of them is looking at expanding it to 20 years by Joan Huffman for trafficking, sorry. Denial of bail under some circumstances to a person accused of a violent or sexual offense. Several bills around definitions. We have Patterson around expanding the definition of trafficking to include solicit or patronizing a victim. Thompson wants to bring forward a bill about leveling a penalty fee on illicit massage businesses, which would be deposited into local general funds. Jetton has brought forth a bill around lifetime sex offender registration for those found guilty of compelling prostitution. Children at Risk is also pushing for stiffer penalties for traffickers who have strangled their victims, moving that charge to a first-degree felony. You won't see that on the bill list because there isn't a direct bill, but you'll see it in the Children at Risk information, which is also a handout for you to peruse. Under judicial protections, we have Theory, that's her name, who wants to bring forward a bill around prohibiting children from referral to juvenile courts for prostitution. Okay, now think about that for a sec. We still do that. Children are referred to criminal courts if they're found guilty of prostitution. How can a child be a prostitute, right? So we still have some gray in this area, and this will help bring some clarification and safety for the victims. There are numerous bills around confidentiality. I personally didn't realize you get married, it's a public record. So your home address is right there and it has maiden name and married name. So a trafficker who was not brought to justice, for example, who's mad at you because you testified against him in court, can find your home address through that public documentation. So a lot around that. Two slightly different bills regarding age of responsibility. Now, age of responsibility in trafficking, our laws in the state of Texas do acknowledge that if you're under 18, you're a minor, right? But age of responsibility for other charges you might receive is 17 in Texas. So that's what this is about, trying to move that forward in our penal code so that age of responsibility would then be under 18, not under 17 as it is today. And Joan Huffman is bringing forward a bill about bail denial. Now, the point here is if a person is accused of a violent or sexual offense or continuous trafficking of persons, she wants them to be denied bail. If they are given bail, she wants to make it less restrictive on the conditions so that the person's appearance in court is required, but yet the safety of our victims is ensured. There is a public hearing on this bill tomorrow. In Austin, it has been referred to the Criminal Justice Committee. And later in this presentation, I'm going to tell you how you can actually watch that hearing. So we're going to do that. Remember, it's a teach you to fish, right? Funds and services. Nicole Collier, who is actually from Tarrant County, has sponsored House Bill 798. Here she is looking for currently a victim of a violent or sexual assault. The crime has to have occurred in their home for them to actually get some of the victim compensation services and resources that are available through the state. And she wants to loosen that qualification so that crime victims can actually qualify for some resources and help. Landlord assistance. This one's interesting, and I do have a comment on this one. This bill is about putting up to $3,500 toward things like deposits, applications, and rent. As a mother of a victim, I will tell you this is tough because do you really want your landlord to know you were a victim of trafficking? The confidentiality as a victim moves past what happened to them. This one's tough. I remember talking with my own daughter, and she was going to move out of the neighborhood, and she qualified, and she said, I don't want my landlord to know that that happened to me. So just something to consider as we're working with our victims, that at some point they want to move past, right? Many of them want to move past. They don't want to be a victim anymore. In administrative bills, we have the Trafficking Prevention Coordinating Council. There's a bill brought forward to add an education designee. If you research on the Office of the Attorney General, you can see who makes up this coordinating council. It's a small group, but today it doesn't include anyone in education. So this is about bringing someone on in education so that we get more support from the educational leadership across the state. Awareness and regulation. Pardon me, I was actually sick last week and I'm still kind of hanging out with this gravelly throat and cough. So several continuing education bills coming forward, training. Several of these are local representatives, just so you know. Hernandez is not. That's the barber and cosmetologist education. Mihaela Plaza, I think that's how she says her name, in Collin County. She's brought forward a bill regarding trauma-informed care for certain judges and attorneys. Justin Holland, who's in Collin and Rockwall counties over near Dallas, he is bringing forward a bill around including trafficking in border operation training programs for local peace officers. And Angela Paxton, who is Ken Paxton's wife, by the way, representative over in the Plano-McKinney area, is sponsoring a bill related to training for physicians regarding identification and assistance of victims. She also has another bill. I like this one. It's related to the duties of peace officers regarding interactions with victims of sexual assault. This goes further than training. It's standards and guidelines for our peace officers, requiring them to assist and support a victim and help them access services. So I think this was a really great one. And then a couple of supportive bills just to talk about. And the reason I put them supportive is they don't necessarily refer to trafficking specifically in the bill. But Children at Risk has brought forward the issue of ATMs, white label ATMs. They're not registered. They're not required to report anything. So if they mandate registration of these privately owned white label ATMs, it'll help prioritize investigations for law enforcement, provide further evidence in convicting traffickers, and permit discovery of large criminal networks. So this is a great bill. And Symphonia Thompson has brought forward a bill regarding collection of penalty fees and actions brought against illicit massage businesses. I'm going to turn it over to Ty, wonderful Ty, and he's going to walk you through some additional information.
So like Glenna and Felicia said, my name is Ty Bowden. I am the Associate Director at the Net. And first off, big thanks to Glenna for doing all of the hard work. She's combing through TLO and hearing about all these bills and compiling them into the documents that you have there. And I just get to do the easy part. But this is a little bit of a who's who of trafficking, mostly here in the DFW area. And so while you have a very comprehensive list of bills in front of you, we're going to kind of spend the rest of the time focusing on how you can make some tangible change. And the biggest way to do that is by talking to the people who are making these decisions and prioritizing these things. And so first, no discussion of anti-trafficking legislation in Texas would be complete without talking about Miss T, Symphonia Thompson. She is in Houston, so she's not local to us, but she is the godmother of anti-trafficking bills here in the state of Texas. She is serving her 25th term in the House. She's the longest serving woman and African-American in Texas legislature history. So she is really who a lot of us in this room owe our jobs to, because she was pounding the table for bills for victims' rights and addressing this issue before many of us were involved in this issue, before most of us even knew what trafficking was. So she has been around a really long time. One of the kind of symbols of her stature in the House and her bipartisan respect is during the last legislative session, when they combined all of the trafficking bills into an omnibus bill. She was the primary author, even though a lot of the bills that were ended up in that omnibus bill were not hers. Her colleagues recognize that she has really been the driving force on this issue in the state. And so they deferred to her. So she's the person that we, like I said, owe much of our work to. And then locally, we have 3 men that you can see up there in Collin County and Dallas, and then Tan Parker is partially here in Tarrant County. These guys for the last decade have really stepped up. And as many of us know, the issue of trafficking has largely been dominated by women stepping into the issue and like I said, banging the table and leading this cause. But these 3 men recognize that this issue is largely driven by men, perpetuated by men, and without men at every level of society, civilian, law enforcement, legislature, stepping into that gap, that we're really not going to see substantial change. And so Representative Shaheen, Representative Meyer, and now Senator Parker have done really good work over this in the last decade, passing bills to increase the penalties for buyers, specifically in the last 2 sessions, and helping make buying a felony. As you can see, they all have bills this session that they are looking to pass to further some of these issues. But I think it's really important that we recognize that without men in both parties stepping in and saying that this is a problem and giving up some of those privileges that they might have in the legislature, where it would be easier for them to look the other way because it doesn't necessarily affect them. These 3 men specifically have stepped into that and decided this is an issue that they care about. And so they are great allies to have and sit on important committees, especially Representative Meyer is the chair of the Ways and Means Committee this legislature, which will have great power in some of these things. And then lastly, as Glenna already mentioned, Angela Paxton, wife of our Attorney General, has been serving in the legislature since 2018, so newer than some of these other faces, but has made this one of the causes that she cares the most about. She also was on the bill that made sex buying a felony last session, and then has a couple of bills that Glenna already talked about, but also her definition of trafficking is her Senate Bill 416 is the mirror bill to the House bill that Representative Huffman brought, that will include patronizing and soliciting in the definition of trafficking, which will then further kind of implicate and bring more consequences for buyers. And so these people in our area are really influential and important. And like I said, these are being able to contact these people, talk to their staff and tell them how important you think this issue is really how change gets made and how they decide which bills to bring out of committee, as Glenna is going to talk about again in just a minute. The importance of talking to these people to help them prioritize which bills get out of committee. Because to be honest, most of the bills that you have in front of you will never see the light of day. And so people in this room make a tangible difference in deciding which of those bills get prioritized this session. Just to do a little bit of where are we now? So this is from Shared Hope International. So just fair warning, I did not create this. This is not my opinion. This is just kind of a view of how Texas is viewed nationally, where we compare to other states on one organization's kind of standard of legislative care. And so we're just going to go through those and talk about a little bit of why. So first, criminal provisions, we get an A because we were the first state in the country to make sex buying a felony. We have really good laws that allow for prosecution of buyers and traffickers. And so in that sense, we are really leading the country, literally being the first state to make that a felony. 2, identification of and response to victims. This goes back to what Glenna talked about earlier. Texas is one of the only states in the nation that still allows, technically, it doesn't happen very often, but still technically allows someone under 17 to be charged with prostitution. And so Representative Thierry's bill, House Bill 1059 that's up there, will solve this. I know there are people in this room who care really deeply about that bill, and it is really important. And so that is kind of the primary reason why we have an F there. Third, we have our continuum of care. And so we're kind of right there in the middle on a C because the CSA program that the governor's office has been implementing over the last several years is doing a really good job in certain areas. But as most CSA advocates will tell you, we especially are having a hard time kind of scaling that to rural areas. And so that's their explanation there. Access to justice. So protection, restitution, and civil remedies. We're going to talk a little bit more about victims of crime to finish today. We have good framework for those for general victims of crime, but 2 big things. One, Glenna already talked about, statutes of limitation for victims who commit crimes under duress of trafficking, or also have the ability to go back later in their life and seek justice for something that was done to them many years ago. And then some sort of vacatur or expungement or sealing of records is something that Texas lags far behind many states in the country on. And so that is the thing that we really should be focusing on in the future to bring that from a B to an A. And then tools for a victim-centered criminal justice response. This I know is a touchy subject and is very difficult, but finding ways for victims to testify without being in front of their traffickers is really difficult. I know it is difficult to build a case for law enforcement and for prosecutors, but until we build out a better framework and give law enforcement and prosecutors better tools so they do not have to rely on victim testimony in person in court in front of their trafficker, then we're going to continue to lag behind the country in that. And then lastly, prevention and training. So again, we have created, it's always been a focus of the legislature to bring, the industries that trafficking touches and make sure that people in those industries are getting the proper training and education. Glenn already talked about several more bills that have been filed for this session. So we just continuing to grow and expand those. But as you can see, we are on the right track. So the last couple things that I want to hit is like I mentioned, the individual legislators hearing from their constituents and from people in the state of Texas who care about these issues is how change happens. And so the main way that those happens is through committee hearings, like Glenna is talking about. Going to show you how to watch one of those. And so it's really important. I'm not going to go through all of these, but as you figure out who represents you, what bills you might care about the most, find the committee members who are going to hear those bills. It's really easy online. We're going to finish with that and figure out, if you live in Phil King's district, figure out what committee seat on, figure out what bills about trafficking that committee is going to hear, and then call his office, send him an email and tell him that you care deeply about that, or go testify. So figure out, for our local Tarrant County senators, figure out what committees they're on, figure out what bills they're going to hear, and be in touch with them. And then lastly, there's obviously a lot more of these for our state reps. But I was in Austin last month and got to touch base with most of these people directly or with their staffs. in their offices, and they do care. They listen. Their staff ask really good questions. They want to know, what should we be prioritizing? What do the people who are doing the boots on the ground work need? And so it matters. So figure out who represents you. Glenna's going to show you exactly how to do that. Figure out what committees they're on, and then give them a call, shoot them an email. It is really simple, but you'd be amazed by how few people they hear from. And so when you do actually tell them that you care about it, you tell them that you're, keeping up to the date with this stuff and following up with them, then it will make a difference. So I'm going to turn it back over to Glenna to finish this up.
He'll be back, don't worry. Okay, so how can you help? It's about your voice. That's what it's about, whether that voice is written, whether it is in person, whether you go speak, it's about your voice, your words. So once you know who, there's a couple ways to work this, right? So one is tell your local representative why they should support trafficking bills in your words. Once you know, draft something and send it to all of them. Just an added point from from their constituency saying, I want you to support trafficking, fighting trafficking. I voted you in. I'm one of your constituency. Please do this, right? You can visit them. You can attend public hearings. You can work it the other way. You can know what committees they represent, watch for bills that come through, and then write them when their committee is going to review a bill, for example. It really does go to them. They see it, whether it's the actual letter or it's one of their staff, because they all have staff. They help go through this. They want your vote the next time around. Just always remember that. You're their customer, right? So to speak. Okay. So I wanted to share this page. Okay, this is your go-to page. www.capital.texas.gov. This is where you can find anything about what's going on in the legislature in Texas. I know it looks like a wild page, so I just want to point a couple things out. So key, if you can see that little red thing, is right here. And you can search by word, phrase, or bill number. So keep in mind, if you search a word or phrase, it's going to search for any bill that has that word in it. So for example, when I was doing the research for this presentation, I put in trafficking, right? Okay. The list was huge, right? And not all of them really had something to do with trafficking. It was just trafficking was mentioned in the bill. So try to be a little more specific of what you're looking for, but broad enough that it can find it, just like when you Google, right? Keep trying. Or if you know the bill number, since we've given you this handy dandy handout with all the bill numbers, you can just put the bill number in and see what's going on with the bill. Key point. If you put a bill number in, took me a while to figure this out, by the way, you cannot just put HB 107. It's HB space 107, or it won't find it. So thought I'd let you know that. Yes.
You provide an updated list that people can see the bill that you. I don't know if you have a place to continuously get that information when it's going to come out if we want to support.
Right. I don't. Yeah. It is, but now that I have the list, I mean, I'd be happy to send out a weekly update of the status, basically that same list with updated status, because now that I did all that work, I want it. So I'd be happy to share that with Alicia and she can put that out there. I can do that. Yeah, but I have to actually.
Benefit from what you're doing, because it's a lot of work and.
Oh, thank you.
To not have to recreate all of that again and for other people to do something with. That would help.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, that's why I said, teach you to fish, right? I'm going to teach you to fish because I fished and this is what I found, right? I'm just simply sharing what I found. Other key things to know on this page, that's the slide thing. There's my point. Right here, House, Senate. You can also get it here. You can get to the members. You can find out who serves on the committees. So you search for a bill, you find out it's going to the Criminal Justice Committee. You can click right there. It's pretty, it's all kind of same information sorted way different ways, basically, if that makes sense. But this is your go-to page. Yep, find out who your legislators are, how to reach them, what work they're doing, special hearings and event calendars. That's the other one I wanted to mention. And at the end, because our Zoom land people won't be able to see it, if we have a minute, I'm going to actually go on and show you how to view a video broadcast of a committee. Since we have this one tomorrow, and I think it's going to be interesting about the bail denial. I want to be sure that everybody knows how quick and easy that is to access those video feeds. They also have archives, so if you miss it, you can go back and I'll show you that. Anything else? I'm going to turn it back over to Ty. I'll let you change the page. Wait, that's pointer. That's slide thing. Okay.
One final note on my TLO, so Texas Legislature Online. If you are looking for a specific bill, you can create an account and then you can actually follow that bill and you will get automatic emails when it changes committee status. So that's a really easy way. So you don't have to wait on Glenna. And if Glenna doesn't have time to update that for the week, you can pick which bills are most important to you on this spreadsheet that she handed out. Go in there, create an account, and then you can just track it and you get automatic updates on a daily or even or weekly notice. And anytime that bill changes status, you will get an alert, which is really helpful.
Ty, can I just make one comment?
Yes.
Don't put them all in there.
Yeah, don't do that.
So many emails and try to press. Pick the ones that you really want to track.
Yeah, okay, so we are going to finish with a video on the victims of crime rights here in Texas. And this is not something that Glenna or I are experts in. And so we just want to show you this video from the governor's office. I believe as Tirza introduced it to me, it is informative, if not necessarily compelling. So stick with us because we do think that it is really important. As members of Five Stones, we are often working with victims of crime. And if we do not know what they're entitled to, then we are doing them a disservice. And so watch this video, learn a little bit about this process. And then if you do have questions, if you want to maybe better access these for some of the people that you serve, let us know and we can get you in touch with someone through Five Stones who does have more expertise in this. So it's about 5 minutes long, and then we'll finish with some Q&A.
That crime victims have rights throughout the criminal justice process.
Did you know that crime victims have rights throughout the criminal justice process? Those rights are afforded by statutes found in the Texas Constitution, Article 1, Bill of Rights, Section 30, Rights of Crime Victims, and the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, Article 56A. A victim, guardian of a victim, or a close relative of a deceased victim is entitled to certain rights within the criminal justice system. To begin, let's talk about who Texas law identifies as a crime victim. A victim is defined as any person who has directly experienced an offense of sexual assault, kidnapping, aggravated robbery, trafficking of persons, injury to a child, elderly individual, or disabled individual, or someone who has suffered personal injury or death because of the criminal conduct of another. A guardian of a victim is defined as the legal guardian of the victim, regardless of whether the legal relationship between the guardian and victim exists because of the age of the victim or due to the physical or mental incompetency of the victim. A close relative of a deceased victim is a spouse, parent, adult sibling, or child. The Texas Constitution affirms that a crime victim has the right to be treated with fairness and respect for the victim's dignity and privacy throughout the criminal justice process. Rights are upon request and not necessarily automatic. Additional rights include, but are not limited to, the right to information, to notification, to be heard, to participate in the criminal justice system, the right to protection, and the right to seek financial remedies. Victims have the right to receive information about rights of crime victims compensation, criminal justice system procedures including investigation, plea bargaining, parole, restitution, and appeal. The victim impact statement and how it is used in the criminal justice process, outcome of the case, status of the offender, contact information of those investigating and prosecuting the case. Victims have the right to be notified upon request about criminal justice proceedings and certain key events including bond, indictment, plea bargains, conviction, sentencing, imprisonment, and release of the offender. There are several points of notification for crime victims at each stage of the criminal justice process, including law enforcement investigation, prosecution, courts, probation, corrections, and appeals. Victims have the right to be heard throughout the criminal justice process. The Victim Impact Statement acts as the victim's voice within the criminal justice system. Prosecutors, judges, parole board members, and commissioners are required to consider the Victim Impact Statement before making certain key decisions. Texas also allows victims to present an oral statement called an allocution to the defendant in the court after sentencing. Victims have the right to participate in the criminal justice process by being present at all public court proceedings related to the offense, subject to the approval of the judge in the case to include pre-trial hearings, arraignment, plea hearing, trial, sentencing, execution. Victims have the right to protection. Laws to protect crime victims include anti-stalking, bond considerations, protection orders, protection from intimidation and harm, privacy protection, safe and secure waiting areas during proceedings. Victims have the right to seek financial remedies. The following types of financial remedies exist to assist victims: crime victims' compensation, restitution. To exercise your rights as a crime victim, guardian of a victim, or close relative of a deceased victim, it is necessary to contact your local victim services professional, such as the Crime Victim Liaison at your local law enforcement agency, Victim Assistance Coordinator at your prosecutor's office or probation office, and the Victim Services Division at the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. It is important to keep your contact information up to date with the appropriate agencies to receive updates and notifications throughout the criminal justice process. If you have any questions regarding these rights and how to exercise them, please contact the Texas Department of Criminal Justice Victim Services Division at 1-800-848-4284 or victim.svc@tdcj.texas.gov.
All right, so like
Did
Glenna
you know
said,
that crime
this
victims
was a
have rights
presentation to
throughout the
prepare
criminal-
you to be able to follow the things that you care about. This are, these bills being in front of you is not a recommendation from either one of us or Five Stones. The Children at Risk legislative agenda is just a tool for you to be able to learn what you care about and how you can participate in this process. So let's give Glenna a big hand for doing all that work. It really is a lot this early on in the session to figure out how many, hundreds of bills are being filed. So like I said, go through that list, figure out what you care about, follow it online, and then please, feel empowered to make those calls, send those emails, go in person, go to Austin, go testify at a committee. Many of you in this room are experts, and the committee members will care about what you have to say. So that's all we have. Our contact info is up there if you need anything from us, but if you have any questions, we'd love to answer them now.
My questions. Special interests have one or more PACs that coordinate and organize grassroots or grassroots communities, actively advocate legislators and their staff members, communicate between legislators, staff, and interested constituents, draft and testify on model legislation, etc. Examples: NAR, PAC, Texas Political League, etc. Does Texas have such an organization or organizations? You can provide the names and affiliations, contact information for the organizations.
Yeah. So boiling that down, basically, I think the question is does the anti-trafficking movement have PACs or lobbyists? And no, to my knowledge, there isn't anyone. I would say, and would love to hear from anyone else in the room who to chime in on this, but Children at Risk really does a lot of those groundwork. They are meeting with legislators on non-session years. They're helping file bills. They're providing research and evidence. And they are, kind of helping formulate an overall holistic strategy. So they have childrenatrisk.org is the best way to probably get a hold of that. They have an advocacy action center online that has the legislative agenda that we passed out today. They have, next steps, a lot of the stuff that we talked about today. And they're really kind of leading the way in a lot of that. Anyone else that y'all can think of? I know a lot of people distribute stuff, but I would definitely say that they are leading the way in that.
I'd agree from a local perspective or Texas
Yeah,
perspective,
Texas
children at risk.
specifically.
Shared Hope International that we mentioned earlier, which was included in the information. Also for their issues provides guides and resources, sample letters. That's an option as well. But of course, they're more national and international with a Texas slice, if that makes sense. Any other questions?
All right.
So this is more of a comment than a question, but one of the earlier slides, you talked about one of the bills regarding more protections for disabled individuals. And I just want to point out that sometimes our minds just automatically assume that means a physical disability. But what we've seen in our unit is that sometimes we come across somebody who has a mental disability. And so mentally, they may be the age of a child, but they're being held to the standard of an adult when it comes to prosecuting these cases.
Great ad, Felicia. Thank you. Thank you. Anything else?
All right. Thank y'all very much.
So I wanted to just show you really quickly because we have a couple of minutes. Now, keep in mind our Zoom land people won't be able to see this, but Alicia tells me she's got it set up. So that's the link on that capital.gov page that takes you, that we selected Senate. And if we're lucky, yeah. So this is what will come up. It'll show you what's live today. And then of course you can go to the archive as well and see what happened yesterday if you want. But we have one going on and I just wanted to just show you how quick and easy this is. So you would look for that hearing tomorrow. And there you go. You could be watching the legislature or the public hearing tomorrow if you wanted, or a different bill. And I just wanted to show you how easy that is. They're just getting started. But you'll see that people that testify, I didn't go down to testify. So for example, I don't personally put my face out there on something that's going to be recorded and seen by anybody they want, because my daughter was a victim and she has moved beyond. And yes, we have different last names, but I try to be a little cautious about how far I put myself out there. But they had a bill a couple of years ago that was related to the age at which someone could be hired to serve alcohol at a strip joint. And it talked to me because my daughter worked at a strip joint for a little while and I couldn't do a thing about it because she was 18. And anyway, I mean, she could do whatever she wanted at that strip joint at 18. It was horrible. There was a mother whose daughter got cut up in the same thing. And she went to testify in person. Her daughter ended up being murdered. Sorry about that. It was passionate. It was incredible. And the one thing I will tell you is if you write a letter, you might get an acknowledgement back from the representative. If you go to this hearing and you testify, you get 3 minutes. You sign up outside at a kiosk. Children at Risk, I'm sure would help as well if you contacted them to help you get connected. 3 minutes, but when you are done, they thank you. I mean, you are talking to the people that are making the decision in the room and they thank you for coming. It was emotional for me watching it. So take time to watch one, even if it's only for a few minutes, because it's fascinating and it really tells you that our legislative system is about our voice. Right? It's our voice communicated by our leaders. So if they don't hear what you have to say, how did they know? So I'm just gonna leave it at that.
All right, thank you. So there was a ton of information in that presentation. If you do have follow-up questions that didn't get answered today, feel free to shoot them to me and I'll get you connected with Glenna and Ty and we'll make sure that you get your questions answered. So thank you for coming out today. Appreciate seeing all of you and we will see you all next month.